Hello my small fat adapted family and welcome back to the Keto Kitchen. It is week 2 of the Great British Bake Off and this week gave us lots and lots of biscuits. Because most of my viewership is American, you call what we call biscuits something different, and I just want to kind of clarify that as best I can really quickly. An English biscuit is hard, it's crunchy, it's a sweet baked treat. It comes from the Latin biscottum panem, which means double baked bread. We do not call these biscuits. The few of us that have witnessed your American biscuits, we call them savoury scones, except they're nothing like British scones because they're soft and fluffy and savoury, and our scones are dense and stodgy and sweet. What we call a cookie is a soft, moist, chewy, sweet baked treat. What you call a cookie is our biscuits and our cookies. So a British biscuit is an American cookie, an American cookie is a British biscuit, and an American biscuit is like a savoury British scone, apart from American scones are nothing like British scones. Easy enough, right? But the most important bit of all this biscuit cookie malarkey is that the Great British Bake Off contestants thrive every year on making shortbread, and this is something Ginger predicted the night before the episode in her Great British Bake Off series. This year Ginger is keto-fying the category of the episode a day before the episode airs, so make sure you check out her Great British Bake Off series so that you've got something to munch on whilst you watch the episode on Tuesday evening, and you've got something to munch on whilst you wait for my video to come out. Okay, so the 3 challenges this week in Biscuit Week were as follows. Number 1 was the signature bake. But rather than just baking biscuits, they had to make them into chocolate biscuit bars. Think like Twix or Kit Kat. Number 2 was the technical challenge, and this was fig rolls. Figs coming in at a solid 20 grams of net carbs per 100 grams or 3.5 ounces. That is not happening today. And number 3, the showstopper, was making like sculptures out of biscuits, and whilst they were awesome and that sounds like such a cool idea, I'm not ready to do anything like that. So this week I will be making the signature biscuit, but I won't be making my signature biscuits. No, that's already too easy for me, and it is already on the channel. And if you don't know, that is my no flour peanut butter biscuits. You can make them in original, you can make them in chocolate, you can make them in chocolate orange, all 3 of which linked down below if you want to go and check those out. If I'm doing this keto bake off, I'm going to be replicating something that I see on the TV every week. For week 2 of the Great British Bake Off, I will be keto-fying Jamie's cherry caramel shortbread biscuit bars. These will consist of a dark chocolate coating, a shortbreadish bottom, a keto-friendly caramel, and keto-friendly cherry on top. It piqued my interest that Jamie used cherry in a Millionaire Shortbread because that's something I've never heard of, and that taste combination does really interest me. And remember, just before I jump into this, I will be only trying this 1 time, and I've just got to trust my gut that it'll work, and if it doesn't, you will be able to see that all on camera. So let's have a look at what is in this recipe. For the chocolate shell, you will need 400 grams of 85% dark chocolate. For the shortbread, you will need 175 grams of almond flour, 24 grams of whey protein powder, 1/4 cup of sweetener, 1 egg, 2 tablespoons of salted butter that's been left at room temperature to go soft. For the caramel, you will need 57 ml of double or heavy cream, 1/6 cup of sweetener, 62 grams of peanut butter, you can use either crunchy or smooth, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. For the cherry filling, you want 15 frozen cranberries, and that's about 25 grams, and you want 1/4 teaspoon of cherry flavouring. In terms of equipment, there is just 2 things you need on top of your normal kitchen equipment. You will need 12 bouche moulds, or whatever you got that's similar to a chocolate bar mould. I have these, not quite bouches because bouches have a curve. I have these, I got them from Lidl a while ago, they're a bit smaller, but they will do the job perfectly. And the other thing that you will need is a pastry brush or an unused paintbrush if you don't have one. Let's get to keto-fying this recipe. We're going to start backwards and do the cherry filling first, just so it can marinate a little bit whilst we do everything else. Now the reason I went with cranberries, you can also use blueberries, is because cranberries are sour and Jamie used sour cherry, so I thought maybe it'll work, and cranberries are pretty low carb. Make sure they are fresh cranberries that have been frozen. Do not use dried cranberries, they are so high in carbs. And what you want to do with your cranberries is just chop them all up like I have. All I'm going to do is take my cherry flavouring and I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon, and I'm just going to give that a bit of a mix, and then that mixture is just going to go in the fridge until we need it. The next step is our shortbread. I mean, technically this isn't a shortbread. I don't really think it matters. I think the important bit is that it has the right taste and texture. First thing you're going to do is you're going to preheat your oven to 175 Celsius or 350 Fahrenheit. Now that my oven's preheated, in this medium to large bowl I have just almond flour, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my whey protein and my sweetener to this and give it a good mix. Then once that mixture is all uniform and well combined, I'm going to add 1 egg and my salted butter that has been softened. We're just going to give this a really good mix. Now what I suggest you do when you get to a point where it's sort of kind of combining but not massively, it's quite coarse breadcrumbs, is just mix it with your hands. You want to keep that sort of crumbly biscuity feel, but you want it to be able to stick together. Okay, so now that I have this sort of shortbread block that you can see sticking together, but it's also able to crumble a little bit, what I'm going to do is pop that to the side, get out a board and go and wash my hands. On this board I'm going to take my dough and I'm going to divide it into 12 even balls. So I find the easiest way to do this is to kind of make a block like that, split that in two, that's 2. Split those in 2, that's 4. Split those in 2, you get the point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Why do I have 15? So there I have 12 even-ish balls. With these, I'm going to take my 12 chocolate bar molds and I'm going to mold these into these, leaving sort of about 1/2 centimetre around the edges. I'm doing it this way just because it's very likely that we all have different size and shape molds that we're using, so rather than saying, oh, roll out a slab and then cut it into 12, it might not fit your mold. So I find doing it this way is a little bit more time consuming, but I think it's worth doing so you don't get to, you know, the assembly bit and realize you messed up. So at this point I have got 2 molds, 12 in total, filled with shortbread that looks like this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pop these in the oven that has preheated, and we're going to put them in for 12 to 15 minutes or just until they're starting to get golden brown and the edges are starting to deepen in colour a little bit. You might just want to keep an eye on them past 12 minutes. Once they are out of the oven, you're going to just leave them still in the silicone molds for about 10 minutes so that they can cool down, because if you touch them and try and move them when they haven't cooled down enough, they will just crumble in your hands. And then after that 10 minutes of cooling down, you want to very gently take them out of their molds and leave them on a wire cooling rack until they have completely cooled. So now we're going to move on to our caramel. Now you might notice, if you're paying attention to the ingredients, this caramel isn't like many keto caramels, and the reason I've gone with this caramel, which is one I've done many times and I absolutely adore, is because I find it's more suitable for cookies and biscuits and chocolates and things like that, because it's more stable because of the peanut butter. It still tastes like a caramel, it's just a lot more thick and stable and doesn't crystallize or anything like that, and you don't get that minty aftertaste. For the caramel, super simple again. You take your heavy cream. I mix mine in a Pyrex jug just because I find it easy, but any microwavable safe bowl will do as long as it's big enough for these 4 ingredients. You get your heavy cream, plonk your peanut butter in your cream, and then I'm literally just going to whack that in the microwave for 20 seconds. It's not quite mixable yet, so I'm just going to plonk it in there for another 20 seconds. Now the cream's nice and hot, the peanut butter is able to mix in there really, really easily. Yeah, this is way too hot. If you see it steaming or anything like this, or that liquidy, you've made it too hot. Once you've got the cream and the peanut butter stirred well, you want to add your sweetener and your vanilla extract. I'm using Salted Caramel by Jordan Skinny Syrups, and because the syrups aren't as strong as extract, I've added another half a teaspoon. So this is 1 teaspoon of syrup. I'm just going to pour that in there as well and give that a really good mix. Mine's going to be a lot more liquidy than yours because I just heated mine up too much, but either way, you're just going to want to sit that aside, leave it to cool at room temperature, and we'll come back to it when we need it. These are fresh out the oven. They only actually took sort of 10 minutes, so I check them at sort of 10 to 12 minutes rather than 12 to 15. And our last step is making the chocolate. As you can see here, I've got a hot plate with a medium to large saucepan on it. In this bowl I have water that is gently simmering, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2/3 of my chocolate. That is 266 grams of your chocolate. You're going to plonk that on top of there like that. Now usually this whole process is done with a thermometer, but I honestly don't think we need one. I'm not going to touch this for 5 minutes. Do not touch it, just leave it to gently melt. You do not want the chocolate in this bowl to come in contact with water, because what happens is it seizes up and then it's just completely unusable. So I'm just going to step away for 5 minutes. It has been 5 minutes and our chocolate it's getting there. Now it's been 5 minutes. I'm just going to take a spatula and I'm going to just help it a little bit, get that chocolate mixed around very gently until all of that chocolate has melted. At this point, just a quick reminder, you should have gotten your shortbread out of its molds and put it on a wire cooling rack to finish cooling. So if you haven't done that, do that now. So now that I'm confident that all of my chocolate is nice and melted, this is where I'm going to start tempering it. Usually you'd use a thermometer and get it to a certain heat and then bring it back down and things like that, but we're going to do this a much simpler way that doesn't require you buying a thermometer. So you're going to take the spatula with some chocolate on it, and that bit just below your lip where my little soul patch is, you're just going to tap it to that. Okay, and what should happen is not only do you get a face full of chocolate, it should sting a little bit. Not massively, just a little quick pinch that goes. If it doesn't have that sting, it's not ready yet. So as you can tell by my reaction, mine's not quite ready yet. So I'm going to leave it a few minutes and just keep stirring it, let it heat a little bit more, and then do that again. Been another few minutes. I've upped the heat just a little bit, not too much because I don't want this steam collapsing into the bowl, and I think it might be ready this time. So again, a bit of chocolate on the spatula, and I'm going to touch it to my mentolabial sulcus, which is this bit here. Not only are we learning to cook today, we're learning some cool science words, and it's totally not because I googled it so I could use any word apart from soul patch. Yeah, okay, so a little bit of a sting, not massively painful, just enough to let me know that that is ready to go. So now at this point, what you want to do is you want to add in the other 1/3 of chocolate, which should be 134 grams. And this process is actually called seeding. Why? I don't know. I'm not a chocolate temperer. So what I'm going to do at this point is turn the heat off, remove this bowl from the heat, making sure you don't get any of that water in, and I'm just going to mix it off the heat. Keep mixing the hot chocolate and the chocolate that we've just put in together until all of it has melted. Now, I'll be honest with you, this is the most laborious part of the whole recipe because this can take up to 15 minutes to do, depending on, you know, whether you want that perfect chocolate temper with the snap and the sheen. There are ways you can speed this up. So things like not cooking it in a metal bowl because metal will hold heat, cooking it in a glass bowl, You can also do things like go to a colder room, obviously not outside if it's raining or something like that, just a cooler room than the kitchen, because the kitchen will probably be one of the hottest rooms right now because, you know, we've just had the oven on and we've got hot water there with steam rising. You will know when this is done because not only will all the chocolate be melted, it'll have that nice glossy sheen to it and it'll be silky smooth. You will of course touch it to your mentolabial sulcus, but this time you'll know it's done when it is colder than body or room temperature. When you tap it, if it's a little bit hotter or you can't feel a difference in the temperature, it ain't ready yet. You want to be able to feel that it's just a little bit colder than your body temperature. Now, as I said, this can take up to 15 minutes, half an hour sometimes if it's winter and you've got the heating on and all that sort of thing, sometimes longer if it's summer and it's really, really hot outside. This is the bugger of chemistry with cooking, is that so many little things will completely change your recipe, and it's not the end of the world. If your chocolate, you know, goes grey and goes dull, it will still taste like fantastic chocolate. But if you're a bit of a perfectionist like me, you're just going to have to just troop through and keep going and keep going and keep going. So I'm going to now be stirring this for probably 10 minutes or so, and then when it's done I will check in with you so that you can have a look. Chocolate, chocolate in my bowl. Who's the silkiest of them all? The fact you can see me waving is a brilliant sign that this is beautifully tempered. It's been about 15 minutes. I've given it one last tap. It's looking really good. It's just the right temperature, so we are ready to start assembling this. There are two things that you need to do before you move on to the assembly. Number one, which I've already done, is I've taken my molds that I use for the shortbread that I'm going to use to assemble these, and I gave them a quick wipe down. I would suggest you do this with a dry kitchen towel or dishcloth or something like that, just because if you combine wet again with this tempered chocolate, you're just going to ruin it. So I just used a kitchen roll and just gave these a real quick clean before we get started. The second thing you want to do is get your cherry cranberries out of the fridge, give them another mix, and then just going to pop them back in. And we shall start with the assembly. You're going to want to get yourself a spoon, you're going to want to get your pastry brush, you're going to want a plate or something to sit your spatula on, because otherwise you're just going to get chocolate absolutely everywhere. First thing we are going to do is we're going to take our spoon, and a spoon, about a spoonful in each of our molds. To this, all I'm going to do is use my pastry brush to spread that chocolate up the sides and across the base of each. Now you do want quite a thick bottom. Make sure your shortbread is cool enough before you put it in, and those are all just going to be squeezed down. Don't press too hard because you don't want to break your base. Now something I've noticed about mine, as you can see, is that I've actually not left enough at the space at the sides to make chocolate sides. It's fine, you know, it's just not as nice presentation. I'm going to use my pastry brush, and I'm literally just at these sides just going to add a little bit more chocolate at these edges that don't have any. Paint up the sides a little bit. Now we're ready for the next step, which is going to be adding the caramel. And I'm just going to spoon on quite a thin layer of this across the shortbread. You should have just enough of this caramel to do this, like literally just the perfect amount. So now we get our cherry cranberries, and I'm just going to evenly put these across. I tell you what, these do smell and feel like cherries. It's quite surreal, even though I knew that was what I was planning to do. I didn't think it would work, and it seems to have really worked. They've really absorbed that cherry flavouring. And now the last step is to coat the top of these in chocolate. I don't want to pour it too vigorously because our caramel is quite soft. I gently pour a coat on the top of each bar. Now with my spatula, I'm just going to try and get them as smooth as possible, just by flattening out, trying not to move those cranberries because those cranberries are very close to the top, so they tend to shift around when you try and even out the chocolate. And there we have a beautifully messy filled mold. And what I'm going to do is just pop these in the fridge for a minimum of 2 hours. I'll let you know how long it takes until they are ready to come out the mold, be cut open and be shown. So it has been an hour and 35 minutes or so. So the way I knew they were done is I give them a tap. Can you hear that? They are completely hard, and what I do is I just gently pull at the sides. You might have caramel coming out a little bit, but give them a gentle pull at the sides, and if they come away pretty easily, you're then able to pop them out, which is the most stressful bit of doing this. We're just gonna slowly tease one out. If it's done, it should come out quite easily like that. Oh my god, look at the shine on that. Wow. Who says you need thermometers to temper chocolate? Oh, that's phenomenal. If you watched Bake Off, you might notice that Jamie's had like a decoration on it, and it was like, it looked like white chocolate and cranberry. We're not gonna bother doing that. I don't think we need to. It's too much of a faff. I think these are gonna be just fine how they are. So give me 5 to get these out of their molds, and we will do a cross section and a taste test. So here, wow, we have 12 beautifully tempered chocolate biscuit bars. They're all pretty even. The sides could do with a bit more chocolate, but I'm really happy with how these have come out. But how they've come out is not the important bit. So let me get up close with this camera here so that you can see. And I'm just gonna cut that down the middle like that. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And look at that. So we've got our shortbread, a little thin layer of caramel, and then you can see if I just lift that bit of chocolate off, we've got some cranberries throughout it. But you want to know the answer to the question, how does it taste? It's clearly shortbready, it's sticky. That peanut layer could probably do with being a little bit more, that caramel layer. And then you get a punch of like sourness from the cranberries and cherry from the cherry flavouring, but blended together it's like these really sour cranberries on top. So, cherry, sorry. Incredible. I'm so happy with that chocolate. Now, in terms of macronutrients, 1 bar, if you make 12 bars, 1 bar is 376 calories, 31 grams of fat, 12 grams of protein, and 5 grams of net carbs. These are astoundingly high, but at the same time I'm kind of not surprised because Bake Off is full of very calorifically dense foods. I would suggest if that's too high for you, cut it in half and have half, so you then have 24 bars of a bar that size as your serving, and then it's only 2.5 net carbs. I'll tell you what, they are super, super indulgent. Like, this tastes like something you'd only have at a fancy restaurant. Oh, I'm so happy. And that is how you make a keto version of Jamie's Cherry Caramel Shortbread Biscuit Bars from week 2 of the Great British Bake Off. Join me next week for a ketoer's absolute worst nightmare, and that is bread week. Like this video if you find it interesting, insightful or helpful. Subscribe if you're inclined. Any questions, any comments, any queries, anything down below. Keep calm, keto on. Thanks for watching.